This video will contain spoilers for the entire story of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. You have been warned. I have a problem with Jin. This isn't an issue with him as a character. I really like the role he plays as an antagonist, and the backstory behind his actions and motivations, even if his personality itself is a bit of a walking cliché. My problem lies, as with most people's, in the power-up that he shows off in Chapter 6. Again, I actually do like it from a story standpoint. It comes at a time when Rex and friends are at their most confident and in control of the situation, and knocks them down a few pegs right after Akos, Pachoka, and Mikhail also reveal their full power and still get beaten. It also ends up providing contrast both to Nia as a powerful flesh eater using their new strength to harm others instead of saving them, and to Mithra as a blade stuck in the past, fixated on the memory of a long-gone driver. Finally, it also provides a third antagonist, besides Malos and Amalthus, who can actually give the party any amount of trouble once Rex unlocks the Aegis' true power. My problem is that the ability he has is so overpowered but so underutilized that if he actually came close to using it to its full potential, he'd be the most powerful in the entire game by far. When he powers up for the first time, Jin directly states that he has control over all elementary particles. Even if you have no idea what that means, you can probably tell that it's an incredibly OP ability just by the name, and if you know the slightest bit of particle physics, you're probably either rolling on the floor laughing at the absurdity of his power when the next strongest character in the game is a planet buster at best, or utterly horrified by the implications. This is a topic that I have trouble wrapping my head around myself, probably because I'm a filthy undergrad, so if you're expecting an in-depth breakdown of the physics behind why Jin's so busted, you're looking in the wrong place, but I will attempt to offer an explanation in layman's terms as to why he's so much scarier than the game shows him to be. For the purposes of this video, I'll only be talking about particles that fall under the standard model that you're seeing on screen now. Just be aware that they are theoretical particles that, if they exist, would only serve to make Jin even more powerful than he already is based on the video. Gravity manipulation. The most basic definition of an elementary particle is something where we don't know what it's made of. These particles in the standard model might be composed of even smaller stuff, that's what string theory is for, but since we don't know for sure, we call them elementary because they're the smallest known building blocks of the universe. Just by looking at this chart, you're probably seeing a few things you recognize. I'm sure most people know what an electron is, and have probably at least heard the words photon and quark in this kind of context before. Without much physics knowledge, I think you can already begin to piece together why Jin should be so much more powerful than he's shown to be. It doesn't look like he can create them from scratch, but he has complete control over all of these particles in his environment, and unlike specific elements or molecules that can only be found or exist under certain conditions, a good chunk of these are either part of you or around you on a daily basis, and he doesn't really need all of them to do ridiculous things. Photons are both what we perceive as light and electromagnetism, and electrons are part of every atom that makes up our bodies, and what we use to power almost every electronic device we've invented so far. Needless to say, he should at least be able to handle the likes of Poppy even faster than he already does, and could probably generate an EMP capable of permanently frying her circuits if he really tried. Even though he appears as an ice element enemy, Jin makes a good case for why he'd be the strongest electric and light blade in all of Allrest, with just 2 of his vast repertoire of particles. Granted, it's implied that the light element in-game is power from the conduit and not just photons, but he is able to completely catch and deflect Mithra's sacred arrow, so he clearly has power over at least the beams that Siren shoots. And this leads us pretty nicely into talking about why he's an Ice Blade in the first place. Most of his arts as a party member are just fancy sword moves, and the game actually considers him elementless in that form, but in his transformed state he's Ice Element due to his ability to cool his surroundings down to absolute zero, which is something he starts doing before he's interrupted by Rex unlocking the Ascended form of the Aegis, and then ends up carrying out later on in a self-sacrificial move to defeat the powered-up Amalthus. Doing it the second time did kill him, but he was already weakened from getting beaten up by the party twice, fighting his way through Moritha, and climbing part of the world tree on his own, so it's pretty obvious that if he tried it at 100% capacity, he'd be able to survive easily. Now, temperature is just a measurement of the speed of the particles in a given area, and absolute zero, or 0 Kelvin, negative 273 Celsius, or negative 460 Fahrenheit, is just a state where they're all completely still, only moving on a quantum level. Seeing how this is physically impossible to achieve in a lab, the energy output Jin is capable of already breaks physics, but more importantly it sheds light on how strict the definition of elementary particle his powers use is. When he kills Amalthus, he uses ice spears he makes by freezing water vapor in the air while also lowering the temperature of it to either absolute zero or something close to it. It's possible that ether energy and the Cloud Sea are made up of particles that he can't control, since it's possible that Klaus created them by pulling stuff out of another dimension with a conduit, but the actual air that makes up the atmosphere of Allrest, and I can say this for certain since it's just a future Earth, is made of atoms and molecules. You probably already know that molecules are made of atoms, and atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons, but if you look back at the standard model, only electrons are actually listed there. That's because protons and neutrons are a different type of particle, called hadrons, which are formed from quarks held together by gluons, both of which are there. Quarks don't even exist on their own, only inside hadrons, so that means that Jin doesn't just have the ability to manipulate elementary particles themselves, but also things that are combinations of elementary particles. While he clearly doesn't use his powers to their full potential, Jin does demonstrate the ability to control regular matter a couple of other times. The first is again when he catches the Sacred Arrow, which might not be made of traditional atoms or molecules, but is at least something other than just photons. It's stated to travel slightly slower than the speed of light, which is why he's able to react to it to catch it in the first place, and is treated completely differently from the targeting laser by the characters, which by definition as a laser is pure light. The second is his ability to completely break physics a second time by accelerating his body to the speed of light. You could argue that, as a blade, his body is composed of some fictional particle that isn't atomic in nature, but he does have Laura's human heart inside him, so at least that much definitely is. This should be physically impossible under special relativity, but since Rex can do it too once he gets his reality warping powers, I think it's just safe to say that the laws of physics in the Xenoblade universe are different enough where reaching absolute zero and moving mass at the speed of light without creating a black hole are possible with enough energy. With that proven, we can begin to piece together exactly what's wrong with Jin's powers. Simply put, if he actually thought about what he was doing, he should have been able to win both fights against the party with little to no difficulty, even with the amount he was weakened in the second one. Yeah, in earlier chapters he's just trying to capture Pyra or Mithra, but by the two times you fight him in his true form, chapter 7 and 9, he doesn't need her alive anymore and can safely go all out. Obviously he and Malas aren't trying particularly hard before Pyra ascends in the first fight, but afterwards he still should be able to win in just one move. Manipulate the molecules that make up Rex's body itself in such a way that it kills him. Yeah, attacking him externally with ice spears like Amalthus might not work since he can just dodge or block at the speed of light, but hitting him internally is almost a guarantee. Yeah, he has a core crystal for a heart and that might be hard to crack, but just start dissolving molecules at random in his brain, or even freeze the water in it, and he'll die pretty quickly, taking the Aegis with him. Same goes for the rest of the party. Even if blades regenerate and core crystals are hard to destroy on a fundamental level, it doesn't take a lot going wrong to shut down a human or presumably Napon body. Not to mention the fact that it'd probably take much less energy to insta-kill someone by smashing a few atomic nuclei in the body together for a small nuclear reaction than it would to cool a large volume of air down to absolute zero. And that is the problem with Jin. It's perfectly fine, narratively speaking, for him to have a power that puts him above Mithra, especially since Nia's Flesh Eater ability is literally reverting any damage to living things or blade weapons. But as he explains it, it's hard for me to imagine even the ascended form of the Aegis being able to defeat him if he uses it properly. The solution? Just give him a weaker but similar power that lets him do all the same stuff he does in the cutscenes, but doesn't imply that he's able to destroy basically anything short of the conduit without really trying. The best one I can think of myself is turning elementary particle manipulation into particle velocity manipulation. This would only work on atoms or molecules, and only extend to Jin's own body and to the air in his immediate surroundings. It might seem more like a wind element power than an ice one, but his fighting style could just rely more on slowing the water vapor in the air down to freeze it, then speeding the ice up again to launch as a projectile, or creating ice walls and mirrors to deflect attacks. This would still give him the ability to go at light speeds since he can affect his own body, as well as redirecting the siren shot by somehow capturing it in an ice crystal or just rotating the air around it so quickly that it gets held in place. This makes him strong, and not easily beatable by just brute force, but not so overpowered that Rex can't immediately get the upper hand once he unlocks the third sword. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should probably do that, because I'm going to be making a lot more Xenoblade videos in this future. I know that I kind of kept throwing myself out there as, oh, I'm the Let's Player and competitive Splatoon guy, but I'm going to also try adding random Xenoblade videos into the mix and see how that goes. I've also got a Twitter and Twitch in the description that you can follow there too. The Twitch specifically is where you're going to find even more Splatoon stuff if you're into that, and I might be streaming some Xenoblade things in the future. But, until next time, this is Luxon, signing off.